I did board committee, but good idea.
I don't know if there's a technical distinction, probably is, boards are elected, commissions are elected, typically committees are.
But not always.
Well,
No.
not always, right, but not always, so it's
I
just,
just think we
Yeah, the
just-
elementary school
Yeah,
committee
Yeah.
elected
we could just for brevity
You have the
explain,
Board of Health, which is
is
appointed.
Right.
Yeah, so it's all over the
but
place.
we could at the beginning of the report just say we're gonna refer to all public bodies as boards.
Boards, yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
that'd be fine.
Okay, so 6 have appointing authority, which is summarized below. So I just put the ones that were, Board of Assessors, Principal Assessor, et cetera. Elementary School Committee, Assistant and Superintendent in agreement with other two towns. I wasn't quite sure how that worked, but I knew that they didn't have exclusive.
Can you clarify, so is the entity on the left side appointing the entity on the right side?
This is the elected
The
board
elected board on the left
is doing these
is
appointments.
appointing on the
Yeah,
right.
do you think that
Okay.
needs to be clarified?
No, it's fine. So what's missing though then is, well, we didn't interview them, which is the board of selectmen, but that's because we didn't interview them.
You didn't interview them.
Got it,
Okay.
got it.
So there's that version of it, but then if you flip over to the other side, I included everyone
Mhm.
and including the ones that don't have appointing authority. And I also included a fourth column that was whether the person whether their appointee was an employee or a member of the board
Nice.
committee.
Very nice.
So I think the question itself doesn't get into whether or not they have appointing authority or whether they actually appoint anyone. So I don't know if there's a
Well, isn't
technical
that the
difference
same
there.
thing? You can't
Well,
appoint someone if you don't have
Well,
appointing
what if they have
authority.
appointing authority and we just don't have, like, what if the planning board had authority to appoint, they don't, a planner, but they just didn't because of budget or whatever other reason?
Oh, hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
I don't know.
So would it be better to just say none under appointments or leave it blank? Either way, I don't think.
Not what?
None, like, so, appointments. Blank columns for the alcohol advisory committee, put none in there.
None, appointments, none. I don't know.
I don't think it's necessary. I think having it blank or
Stand out,
empty
yeah.
is easier to see.
Yeah, it's easier
right?
to
Less
see.
noise.
Yeah, less noise.
Okay.
I don't know. I think we just have to presume that things that are left blank intentionally, like you.
I concur.
Okay, I don't know, preference, just thought it would be fewer questions, not just viewing it. One less question we'll have to answer down the road if someone asks why it's blank.
Well, we could always put it,
Oh.
if blank none or something like that.
Yeah, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, but I do sort of think that it's easier to understand what this means like this. So my question would be, do I include both, or do I just include the one that has everybody in it?
Well, the first one's less busy, yeah.
Well, yes, the first one, to me, is the way to go, but then I didn't know, in this one, I didn't say whether I could add a column that says whether they were an employee or a member of a board.
You mean in the right column? Yeah, I think I prefer the shorter.
I think so
version.
too. And I think.
And yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with your suggestion of including in parentheses or another column whether that appointment
Yeah, because we asked them
is
specifically,
a volunteer.
do you
or not.
appoint persons to any other boards or committees, and if so, which ones? No, we don't ask them if they're an employee.
And
Oh,
people
no,
do-
it says, which employees do you appoint? So it would be
Yeah.
important to say whether they were an employee.
But people understand a superintendent's an employee versus committee's a committee. I don't
Maybe-
know you need to even add that color.
Well, I only say that because we specifically say, what employees do you appoint? And do you appoint persons to any boards or committees? But it doesn't
I
matter.
think I think it's in good shape.
Okay. Those are all the easy ones.
This one's wrong.
Question 4. Do members of your board generally have expertise, knowledge, or skills specifically related to your board? Okay. This is kind of like beating, this is like, so whatever. The overwhelming majority of boards, 18 out of 20, have members with experience, knowledge, or skills specifically related to the board's functions. Of the remaining 2, the Board of Trustees felt no specific knowledge was necessary, just a love of the library. And the Rail Trail Committee was mixed, with some having skills such as grant writing and environmental regulations, but all having a passion for making the rail trail a positive experience.
I'm feeling very good because my responses, my summaries are similar in depth to yours.
Mine are very similar too.
Okay, so, but then when I tried to put this in a chart, because you said put it in a chart, I could have gone to one like this where I listed everybody and said what they were, or something simple, again.
So with regard to the chart, I think, and it's probably my fault if I wasn't clear enough, I think what I was thinking is list the question, list the summary in plain English, and then have our existing chart on, as an appendix to the main report. I don't know that we need to create a new chart, simply because it's really difficult to create a new chart for each question. And I don't think we can, you did? Did you?
Almost. Once you have this, it's real easy to do.
Okay.
You know, once you have it all listed and you say whether they're elected or appointed, you're just filling in a couple of columns. But
A lot of my questions did not lend themselves to easy charts.
we're getting to those.
Yeah.
I took, these were the simple ones. These are basically the yes/no answers. These are really simple. So you would say that I don't even need this little?
Well, if it's helpful and easy, I don't think it hurts.
Yeah, I think for this question 4, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
But to your point, I didn't have to do any charts. Because
I
I just figured I was gonna rely on a appendix which was gonna have essentially your aggregated response.
Okay.
I think so. And
So then this,
But I like having it embedded here the way you did in question 4, because it lends itself well to that.
my thing is, I think my goal for the summary would be that people didn't have to necessarily take our word for it. There'd be a chart there that would say, yeah, this
Good
is what
point.
we
I think
found.
it's a good point.
But I was hoping, so when you get to mine, I have the question, the summary, and then the chart on that same page. We could maybe consider that. I only did it today for draft or reference purposes. Or we could put it in an appendix, so you could look at the summary, and then you could flip to the appendix if that's what you wanted to do.
Oh, so you mean you'd put all these charts in the
And
appendix?
the appendix, and
Oh,
people
I
could
hear
look
what
at
you're
their
saying.
data, just for summary purposes. And I just pulled this out because, so this is something that Hamilton Wenham had done for, it is in-depth and exhaustive. It's
Yeah, I'm
quite,
exhausted looking at it.
yeah, it's, yeah.
It's too fat for me.
So, it's pretty impressive. Now, Hamilton and Wenham didn't prepare this. The Department of Labor Services, which is a division of Division of Labor
so
Services.
They had some professional.
Yeah, well,
knowledge.
it's part of the Massachusetts Department of Revenue.
Yeah.
Very- But,
But you mentioned that in context of why.
in
we just
context
did it
of
in format.
format and example as to how they did it. And don't know that this is what we wanna do, but.
Yeah, I see a lot of page after page of text there,
Mhm.
which I'm not sure is as useful as what we have, which is a summary answer
Yeah,
for
because
the
if you wanna read all
25.
the text, you can just go read the whole report.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you would say, I don't have page numbers or anything, I didn't do much for formatting. For question 4, this would be a sufficient chart, we don't have to go the long one where we list everyone and say what they said.
Not if we already have all the sort of what I'm calling the master list of responses, which we've had for a while now, that probably just
Yeah.
needs to be cleaned up and we could attach as an appendix. I think it would be, I'm not gonna say repetitive, but it might be too much. Now, whether or not we add something, is there information here that we might add to that chart, potentially? Possibly, but
Well, I think the only thing is that if you,
break it down.
here we'll have it in 5 or 6 pages.
Mhm.
Here we have it in one chart.
Well, this also does not yet, at least, it doesn't separate appointed from elected,
Yeah, yeah.
which this does very nicely.
We could reorder these into elected and appointed pretty easily. But
Well, my thought was, I kept it in alphabetical order for ease of reference,
Mhm.
but I did also think maybe you at the top group all the elected, and in the bottom you have another small chart with all the
Yeah.
appointed.
Right.
You know, you can break these out, but I didn't know, for reference, I'm looking at this and going, oh, well, what about the Council on Aging? Well, then I have to know whether it's elected or appointed to look at which chart quickly.
The other thing I did was, I just basically, just as I was taking notes, so I could recall what I was looking at, just did a verbal change, I made all the appointed boards, and it put them all in italics, and put all the other ones that
And I
underlined.
highlighted all the elected in
Yeah.
yellow.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know,
Like
but
little
that's not
shortcuts
my
like
work-
that,
that's not my
yeah.
working copy,
Right.
but But that's
I went through and put A's and E's next to
That's
everything.
very clever. So I do think, though, that the majority of the consumers are going to be reading the summaries.
Yes.
And while some consumers will appreciate having the master responses on the end, I think most people are going to be satisfied with the summaries.
Mhm.
And so I would encourage, I would suggest that having something like this instead of like that is sufficient in the summaries.
Okay, so then,
That's my 2 cents.
so particularly if it's 18 out of 20 that say the same thing.
Right.
Okay, so then we're saying that I don't need the long chart for question 4.
Right,
You don't need it.
don't delete it, because I at least.
I will keep
like to
them.
look at it,
Okay, that's
to see
fair
if there's any nuggets that we can pull into our report.
All right, well, okay, question 5. How important is it for your boards to have experience, knowledge, or skills? Majority of boards, 12 out of 20, very important. The vast majority of appointed boards, 8 out of 10, said it was very important, or less than half, 4 out of 10. Elected boards said so. More elected boards, 6 out of 10, have appointed, more elected boards than appointed boards, 1 out of 10, said it was moderately important. Cultural Council said anyone is trainable. And things like that, I don't know whether you just leave it there or whether you,
I think it adds,
Humor?
It adds color. and-
Color.
Yeah.
It adds color.
Yeah.
I like it.
There was a couple things I noted, quotes in my response that I don't know that I picked up on before, but I found them to be interesting.
Yeah, and I did one as well, which I hope is, you may say, oh, that's sort of a negative comment, maybe we shouldn't
you know, I have.
highlight it, but we can discuss it when we get there.
Yeah, I have a couple of those here that I really want to talk about. Question number 6, which was our gigantic chart, I just
Yeah.
sort of switched the accesses and squished it down and got it onto one page.
Well done.
Great.
And I didn't make any, there's no summary of it per se, because I don't know what to say.
Right, because we did, I think you're right, because we discussed that averages are not useful in
Yeah,
this context.
so there's no, I took the averages out,
Good.
and then there's 2 that I still have a question for, which you guys, you
Open
answered, I
space
guess,
and
a little. Open space, and I was gonna give Dave a call, maybe he has it and didn't make it to the summary. The Open Space Council and the rail trail, they just don't add up.
I think, I can check again what Dave sent to me, but I have a feeling it's not in here, so I'll have to make a note to myself to check that.
Yeah, my recollection was that his did not add up either when I looked at this.
Well, you know, between my personal notes and what we published in the summary, and it was probably me doing the transcribing, my numbers were not correct. Libby's numbers weren't correct. Libby went back to her original interviews and corrected them, so maybe that, maybe Dave can too.
Oh, speaking of which, excuse the tangent, do you know if Libby's answers ever got
I'm not,
done?
no, I do not know.
I don't know. I saw Deb yesterday and she didn't say, oh, Libby left this for you, so.
I can put that on my checklist as Debbie for that, Debbie and. Before we move on from 6, does it make sense to put in a sentence or 2 regarding the fact that we don't really think averages here would be representative of the responses?
I do.
So, because people are gonna
Right,
take it out of
don't
context.
you agree that
Oh,
averages
yeah,
are not a
yeah,
good idea?
yeah.
Yeah,
So we
so,
might wanna add a sentence
yeah.
to that
Okay.
effect.
All right. So probably below the board or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
Below.
so.
Yeah,
Below,
below,
yeah.
below, yeah.
Yeah, no. So basically I'm saying as little as averages of time spent do not.
Averages of times, I'm just spitballing, time spent are not necessarily representative
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
So, as I look at this table though, I do, one question kind of jumps out to me, and that is that for road and water, they spend 50% of the time on other, which seems like a lot. So,
I don't
do you
know
know,
what that other was.
do you know, were there any comments? Oh, there weren't any?
Well, that would be
Those would be
yours.
me. I don't recall specifically, And that, I agree, that seems high, and I'm wondering if it's in the right columns, maybe that should be an E.
Formal executive
And that's-
functions?
Yeah,
Oh, maybe. Well, I know that somebody had a high in formal executive functions. The Conservation Commission was really high there, but that's what they do. They meet and review
Right.
people's things. And then 90% of the planning board, they meet and review. That's, yeah, let me take a
I
quick-
believe that I'm gonna find it as formal executive functions, and that's the wrong column.
Okay, well, why don't we,
And
I'll just circle it and wait for an answer back from you.
And I also think that, is there a way we can summarize the numbers that, you know, in English that, you know, appears that, even if it's the same, like the results are mixed, some boards, you know, spend most of their time going over formal applications, if that's what they do, but something, you know,
Something says, well, I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything.
right, well, so long-term planning, there's a few outliers in, you know, in long-term planning, but most boards, it appears put somewhere around 10 to 20% of the
Well, see,
time.
that's where the average, that's where you
Right.
could do an average. Is a mean better than an average? The mean time of boards spent on long-term planning is, because then you get rid of the highs and the lows.
Mhm.
And if everybody's clumped in the middle, then a mean makes sense, doesn't it?
I've forgotten what
A
a mean is
mean-
compared to an average.
An average, you add them all up and divide by
Right,
the
by the
number.
number, right.
A mean is, if you have, say you have 9, okay, then whatever's the fifth, you put them in numerical
Oh,
order,
this
whatever's
is
the
what's
fifth.
in the middle?
Yes,
Okay,
because then you get rid of the outliers.
yeah.
It's sort of like the curve, you know? Well, let's pick one and see.
Well, just big policies, paragraph or column A. I mean, you would get rid of the board of trustees at 55, I mean,
Yeah, we can just do a high one and a low one, do 15 and get rid of the 2.5 in Board of Assessors. And then what's the next highest one? 30, oh, there's another 50 down here, 50, you can get rid of a 5. And then you have a 30, I don't see anything, 30, you get rid of another
It's gonna
5.
be tricky though,
yeah, it is.
because a much easier one is column F, where the majority are 0.
And we're not even sure that those two 50s are right.
And we're not sure they're right, but I mean, any number higher than 0 is gonna skew it.
I guess what I'm trying to is be able to state is, it appears that, you know, the boards all spend some time doing policy, budget, long-term planning, formal executive functions, and administrative functions to various degrees. I don't know, I mean, maybe that's even too generalized to state, but is there anything that we can take away from these numbers that we can put in English?
Well, do you want me to maybe take this offline and look at what the means are? And when we come to our next meeting, which is like next week, we could just maybe have something to work with then? I don't,
Sure, if you want to do that, that's fine.
because we got a lot of questions to get through, and I'm sure the ones as we go on are gonna be harder.
This might be, maybe next question, say 26, the most important question that people will want to know. I think people would be interested to see what boards spend their time on.
Well, maybe we all could, maybe offline, we could all take a crack at it.
Sure.
Yeah, I would actually enjoy taking track of this, so let's,
And thank you for your spreadsheet, because I just flipped it.
all attempts to summarize. Because, yeah, I was thinking I like what you were saying, Lou, which is something like all boards spend time doing policy. Most boards spend time doing operational administration. Fewer do budget, even fewer still do whatever, long-term planning, whatever.
Well, if you knew, yeah, okay. When I got to there, I thought, oh, this is nice, but it doesn't tell us anything, you know, just having it like
Yeah,
that.
no, it's a data-rich response, and I'm trying to figure out what the takeaway is from Stabler's response.
Right, so, I agree. We wanna make it as easy as possible for the reader to read it, but also we wanna impart what we think it means.
Right.
Well, I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back and take that spreadsheet and put the average back in and see if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And then maybe look at the
What does it mean?
the means and figure out if that makes any sense. If it makes common sense looking at what the numbers are. Because you know, statistics can tell you anything. Okay, how often does your board meet and is it sufficient for long-term, for your goals and long-term planning? Okay, boards meet as little as 2 times per year and up to 25 times per year, with the majority, 13 out of 20, meeting once per month or more. Almost half, 9 out of 20, meet more frequently when necessary. All boards said they met sufficiently to meet their goals.
Mhm.
And I didn't really know what to do about the moderator, so I just said no meetings
I
except
think you
town meeting.
phrased that word.
Who meets 25 times a year, is that the FinCom?
Yeah.
I had 25 plus times a year, but then I took it out. I just made, she said 25 times per year.
Yeah, that's,
But, is it the Conservation Commission meets twice a month, so they meet 24 times a year.
you're right there.
And more as necessary, I think, I don't know, is that true? Some meet more as necessary. Conservation Commission, no, they just meet 13 to 20. I didn't know about the numbers, I didn't know whether we do 2 to 6, 12, or 13 to 25, or whether we do less than 12, 12 more than 12. I don't
12
know.
makes sense to me, it's once a month, that makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Well, I
That's fine.
think the 12 column is a good column to have in there, because
Yeah.
that's what most people do. I mean, that's what you think most people do.
And 13 to 25 makes sense for the same, would it be 13 to 24 though? 13 to,
No, 25, they said they moved
oh, okay.
25 times per year.
I was thinking twice a month as opposed to what the
Yeah.
FinCom said.
And then I thought it was kind of important to highlight the ones that hardly ever meet for very valid reasons. And only a couple of those said they meet more frequently. Well, no, I can't really say that.
I think the big takeaway from that is the last sentence. I think that's what we care about.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think this whole thing said to me, when I look at things, is that the boards feel comfortable with what they're doing. Nobody feels like
Right. Well, because they have control.
they have control, and that's a wonderful thing.
They can,
All right. This was one of my slightly controversial ones. Our administrative tasks generally handled in a routine and timely manner, and are there administrative tasks that might be characterized as unnecessarily requiring the time or oversight of your board? Okay. All boards, 20 out of 20, said administrative tasks are generally handled in a routine and timely manner. The vast majority of boards, 17 out of 20, said there are no administrative tasks that might be characterized as unnecessarily requiring the time or oversight by their board. Then I said what those three were, and a few boards, 3 out of 20, all of which were appointed, said that there were administrative tasks that might be characterized as unnecessary for them or their administrative staff. The Board of Health felt the tasks assigned to their administrative assistant by the town administrator, such as handling trash stickers, blah, 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 detects from her primary duty of supporting the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission.
that she re-echoed that comment.
So,
One of my answers.
I got it in a couple of these as well, very, very similar.
Okay, well then we should leave it in there.
But you
Yeah.
think so? And maybe you minimize the 3 out of 20 rather, because the whole, you don't want the whole paragraph to highlight, I mean, 2/3 of the paragraph highlight the minority there, so maybe say only a few boards, does that
I said, do
help?
you want to say only a few boards? I said a few boards.
Okay.
I'll stick only in there if you want to.
I thought you were saying, you don't want to highlight or emphasize.
Well,
Yeah.
what I didn't want to emphasize, and I didn't necessarily want to emphasize that these particular boards were dissatisfied with the role of this particular, not the particular employee, but the particular position. Because for some personnel issues that I have some understanding of, okay, it was a way to accommodate a certain person in a certain role, okay? And it isn't, I don't know how much more I want to say about it, but
I hear what you're saying, that you don't wanna let the exceptions overwhelm the majority. On the other hand, and so, you know, we start with the majority, and that's appropriate. I think it's okay to mention the exceptions here, because at least the people went out of their way to
tell us.
provide the information. I think some people may just say no because it's easy to do so, or whatever. I think it would be a shame to not include it in the
Yeah,
summary.
well, I still think we should include it in the summary, but if you look at my alternative wording,
Okay.
it was, the Board of Health felt the task assigned to their administrative assistant by the town, oh, I could put administrator there, detracts from her primary duties of supporting the Board of Health and Conservation Commission.
I like that.
That's
Without-
tight
Easier to
sufficient.
digest.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
sufficient, yes.
Okay,
I'm
and I
good
was
with that.
I was preferring this one.
I'm good with that.
Okay, the other one's pretty much the same, I just said the historical commission said it would be efficient if the building inspector had historical.
Mhm. Yep.
And the cultural council said Saturday openings of town hall would make sign off and reimbursement easier.
Nice, no, I
Yeah, I like
your
number two,
alternatives.
yeah.
Yeah, I like your alternative better.
All right. Okay. Question number 9. How do you generally reach decisions as a board? Legal requirements, past practices, personal experiences, education, etc. The vast majority of boards, 16 out of 20, use multiple ways to make decisions. In general, the two most frequently used are past practices, 13 out of 20, and legal requirements, 11 out of 20. The most frequently used by elected boards is past practices, 8 out of 10, and for appointed boards, it's legal requirements, past practices, and others added together, which are each
Yeah.
5 out of 10. There was no single one that. And then this is another one of those where the chart's on the second page. And that's the appropriate chart.
That's very,
I like the chart.
I like this chart too.
You like it? Oh,
I
good.
like it. Yeah, stamp of approval.
I hate
Because
charts.
this is a multi-answer thing, right? So it's not like people could choose just one or.
And it's very simple, the X's, I mean, that's pretty.
it's always good.
Okay. This was my hardest question to try to do, and I'll give you a little preface.
Try it for you, I'm sure.
24. When we said, what advantages and disadvantages do you see from having elected versus appointed boards?
I think I did 24. 24? No,
I
I
did
did
24.
Okay.
Okay. We all sort of said, oh yeah, everybody's pretty happy with the mix.
I thought
They
so.
think we have the right mix.
Yeah,
Well, I went and I counted the answers, and actually, only 4 out of 20 explicitly said Topsfield has the right
that was
mix.
interesting.
Isn't that interesting? But on the
We
other
must have all
hand,
heard it.
and on the other hand, I don't think any of us heard that it was a horrible mix. So I think that was the impression we came
Yes.
away with, where the numbers itself don't explicitly
Interesting.
validate that. So I tried to capture that in this, but I don't know if I did. In general, elected boards gave advantages of elected boards, while appointed boards gave advantages of appointed boards. But no one advocated for all elected or all appointed boards. Okay? A few boards, 4 out of 20, explicitly said Topsfield has the right mix of elected and appointed boards. The most cited advantages of elected boards are more responsive to citizens' concerns, independent, and allow for diversity. 8 out of 20. While most advantages for appointed boards are allow for specific skills and knowledge and timeliness of appointment. 6 out of 20. A few boards said appointed boards lack diversity. 2 out of 20. And individuals are appointed that are known or liked by the appointing authority. 2 out of 20. While elections could result in the unqualified popular candidate and those in it for political, personal gain winning. That sentence doesn't make much sense, but I think you get it. 3 out of 20.
So just so you know, when you get to it, I did do that one, because I just assumed I had number 10 and the last third of the questions.
Oh, well, it'd be interesting to
So,
see
yeah,
how you approached it.
It's similar,
So then I couldn't come up with, well, I did come up with charts, but first I did a summary of the comments that elected boards made, the summary of the comments that appointed boards made, and then on the other page, tried to come up with the advantages of elected boards and the disadvantages of elected boards, and the advantages of appointed boards and the disadvantages of appointed boards. It was a pain.
That's a lot of information that, I don't know,
I,
if you wanna have it there in the appendix.
well, I don't know how much, I don't know how much information to give, but part of this was my exercise to figure out what it was really saying, you know, what was it saying?
Right, what are they saying, right, and it was a mixed bag, it was really, this one was surprising to me too, that's what, you know, I got the same.
We all thought, oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, no,
that's
everyone's fine, everyone likes the way it is, and.
4 out of 20.
So, and a lot of them were very neutral, a lot of them gave responses that they could see both sides of the coin. Like, they could-
Well-
So like, how do you tabulate those as, you know?
Well, if you said, this is good and this is good, well then, that counted as a good for each thing.
That's how you did it, right? So what I ended up doing was saying 10 were neutral, they saw advantages to both, and disadvantages to both. And number 6 were 6 favored elected boards generally, and 4 favored appointed boards. And that's how it came out. But
But you know what was
maybe
interesting to me is that when you asked them what the advantages and disadvantages were, most of them concentrated on the kind of board they were.
Mhm.
You know, if I'm an appointed board, I'm gonna tell you everything that's good about appointed boards, and maybe I'll tell you one thing that's bad about elected boards. But very few appointed boards said, these are the advantages of elected boards,
Right.
these are the advantages of appointed boards.
So when you say in this last sentence here, a few boards, is it accurate to say a few boards all appointed, instead of appointed boards lack diversity?
No, that's
right.
not true.
Okay,
It's mixed.
so,
I can't say that, and this is what it was, there was like, here's elected boards. Appointments could go to a friend without qualifications. And here's appointed said, there was one here someplace. Maybe that one isn't a good example. But I can hear what you're trying to say. I hear what you're saying. You want, can,
Highlight that somehow, that, go ahead, I'm sorry, you can interrupt.
to say, to sort of pull out that elected boards are pointing out this disadvantage of appointed boards, and appointed boards are pointing out this disadvantage of elected boards. But the stated disadvantages or advantages of boards weren't necessarily all, it could not necessarily be summarized that simply.
well, I'm not sure about not being able to summarize it that simply, but definitely the first half of that. Like, you know, if we could say, I didn't study that aspect of it close enough to know that the appointed boards generally said that it was, you know, you need to have requisite skill and experience to be on a board. And so that therefore it was advantageous to have appointed boards. And
Well, they did very much say that, but there were a few elected boards that made that point too. But what I heard loud and clear from some people that were very emphatic about it, like conservation, health, which you need skills there, historic, okay? There's very specific skills that go into that. You don't learn on the job, well you could, but that's not really what you do. But then on the other hand, somebody like planning felt strongly that there were certain skills that they needed, even though they're elected. What did you say about that? Maybe it's a conglomeration of the both of ours.
yeah, that might be, it'll be long, I guess. We'll have to figure out how to refine it, but I started with saying the responses to this question were mixed. Some of the respondents, 6 of 20, generally favored having elected boards, stating that elected boards are more conducive to having a more representative diversity of participants in town government, and town officials were responsive to the concern of Topsfield's residents. The views of many respondents were more neutral. Those respondents, 10 of 20, including those favoring having elected boards, expressly recognize the value of having boards whose members are elected and appointed, for the same reasons above, basically, that it's conducive to diversity and responsive to Topsfield residents.
And because appointed boards can help ensure that a particular position is held by a person having specific or requisite skills, experience, and knowledge.
Mhm.
Some of the respondents, 420, suggested it was important to have appointed boards whose members would have specific or requisite skills, experience, and knowledge. So, based upon discussions with respondents, the GRC construes there to be general support for the current mix of elected and appointed town boards and committees, striking a balance between elected boards responsive to all residents and appointed boards consisting of members who should have some level of specialized skill, experience, and knowledge to perform the responsibilities of a particular board or committee.
I don't disagree with anything you said.
So it's, I don't disagree with anything here.
It's
So we
just
have
how we
to, how
want
we put it together.
Yeah, well, I think the way you put it, more than the way I put it, emphasizes, with a few numbers to support it, the consensus that we got by reading, the consensus I got by reading all of that.
Which I think is important to do consensus, but also exceptions. So maybe what we could do is start with the consensus and then do a few notes and then put yours, do it that way.
Okay.
But I don't care as far as whose
At the
language we
end,
use.
oh, no,
It's just,
no.
I think we want to highlight the commonalities and then point out some of the concerns or stated reasons for having appointed or having elected boards. Which is what these are, I think, right?
Well, those are the comments that each kind of board made, and the back sort of says what each board thought was the advantages of elected boards and the disadvantage of elected boards comes from all responses, not just from elected. So you mix the elected with the appointed and got the gist of what they all said.
What if you just took, you can put in your own words, you can use mine if it helps, but, and you said the general consensus was,
Yeah,
and maybe that's what this first sentence is, let me just read it again.
no, I'm very specifically saying that if you were an elected, you told me about elected, and if you were an appointed, you told me about appointed, in general.
So I had 50% saying that they were more neutral, but basically they said they saw the advantages and disadvantages of both.
And that could hold true, because many said, not many, but a number said, where, I'm trying to find the right wording. Checks and balances, having both. Elected as representative and independent versus appointed allows for specific skills and knowledge. To me, that's the good mix, no issue. A good mix in town, but you appoint for specific skills and knowledge. So it could get up as high as 10 if you count it that way. What my 4 was that explicitly, when people explicitly came out without interpreting what people said.
There's a lot of different ways to slice this one.
But I think in some respect, we have to go with what our gut was when we all read. We all sat with these people, we all heard what they had to say. None of us came back and said, oh, it's a big mess, we need to change everything.
That's what I try to do with my last paragraph.
Yeah, and you did do that, yeah.
So maybe, I don't know if you want to take a crack at trying to harmonize those or revising it, put a consensus in there, or
Well,
if you
if
want.
I can take
both
your,
do it.
if I can take your wording,
Yep.
and then I'll try to,
Do what you want.
I'll try to meld it
Yeah. I
in
mean,
some way.
You have it somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think your last paragraph on this is actually the takeaway.
I think so too, that's sort of like the summary.
And I use the word construe because that was our general feeling when we talked about this consistently that, there was, the takeaway was that, there's,
Page
I don't know
14.
if support is too strong, or if we wanna say no objections. Maybe it's the same difference.
I think if someone went to our raw data and read it all and then read this, they couldn't object. I don't, because this is what we came away with after we interviewed and listened to what everybody had to say and understood their emotions and their nuances and everything else. I guess the only thing is, how much more information do we want to support that without getting, so that it's such a quagmire?
So are you thinking, put that sentence first and then try to avoid the quagmire by parsing out different, slicing it different ways?
Well, we could use this as the main statement, and then maybe say something like, in general, elected boards gave advantages for elected boards, et cetera, and then maybe pull out a few things that are a good representative, without maybe quoting numbers. Because to come to any sort of like 3 out of whatever,
I agree, but I would ask that we consider saying 10 of 20 were neutral.
yeah,
That's because that's
yeah.
50%, that's a decent sized number, I think.
And what I'll do is, I'll go through the things I hadn't seen. If my interpretation comes out to be
Right.
10 of 20,
Right,
okay.
and that's why, one of the things, when I thought this question was mine, I highlighted these differently. So the ones that I put in, I don't know if I wrote it down, I think it's the ones I put in green. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Green must
7,
be
8.
a mix of balance.
And yeah, those were, green was the neutral, I didn't have any
Neutral.
specific, it didn't mean go or anything like that, I just chose, I usually just use yellow, and so green was the second color I chose, but, that was, so green was the 10,
Yeah,
pinkish purple colors, the 4, I mean, you could add them up, and then the yellow was the 6, but that's just,
and so what did yellow actually mean?
I took yellow as being generally pro-elected boards.
Elected boards are better.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so that was, because sometimes it's not easy to interpret what these responses mean, right? Not so much what they mean, how to categorize them for our purposes of summarizing them.
And what did you say?
So did you have like a particular question
Appointed boards. Okay, so
for a particular board that you wanted to talk about? Like I like, let's see. I mean, the ones that say, the ones that are pro-appoint are pretty clear to me. And the ones that are pro-elected are pretty clear, some of the green ones.
well, I think we could come up with maybe, obviously, the pro for appointed that we heard on both sides is you get the requisite skills and experience. I think that's pretty, the negative for appointed is sometimes someone gets appointed because of who they know or their friends or they come from the pool.
They're the same circle.
Yeah, the same circle. And, there's something to be said for that too, because those are the people that volunteer, so. And then the elected is, it allows for diversity, the people have more of an input, it's more independent, so those are the advantages. And then the disadvantage would be someone's running for political gain or whatever, which you guys may have to share.
Someone in theory could try to lobby to get appointed for a game, some kind of game. I don't
Oh,
know
of
what
course
that
they
would
could,
be,
of
but-
course they could. But I mean, this is what we didn't hear any, well, did we hear anybody say that? I didn't actually remember hearing anybody saying people lobby to get appointed so that they have some personal gain. The personal gain came over from the elected side. But yeah. So that could be the advantages and disadvantages really summarized,
Okay.
general feel.
Well, I think looking at your numbers in my reading of it, they're pretty close. This one says,
We approach it a little bit different now, look at the year 20,
Yeah, but I don't think our numbers are incredibly different, I just think we looked at it a little differently.
And I don't think I
Grouped it differently.
disagree, yes, with the grouping, I think we probably agree there, but, I mean, if you wanna take a shot at it, and if you have questions about what I was thinking, you can just call me, or you can,
So when I give the advantages and the disadvantages, do you want me to attach numbers to this? What parts of it do we want to put numbers? Like you very specifically have a number here when you say, well, you do have numbers.
I do, but I lumped them together in three broad categories of pro-elected, neutral, and pro-appointed.
Okay,
So basically, I had them all add up to 20 and categorize them in those three categories.
okay, well, why don't I like the idea of the three categories, I think it's much clearer, and I don't think we lose anything from that. So why don't I just look at your numbers and look at my numbers
Yeah.
and see if we agree? And then I think for the listed advantages and disadvantages, maybe we give, advantage and disadvantage, either one or two for each
The
flavor.
ones mostly suck.
The ones, yeah,
Okay, that makes sense to me.
okay.
And, feel free to make suggestions to the language, it's not
Well,
set in stone by
We-
any means.
we'll work on that.
Yeah. So that's great, thank you.
Yeah,
I put a lot of
right.
work into it.
Nice job, Roberta, very impressive.
So for next week, excuse me, I don't know what's cutting me. Is the goal to try to have these in a final form to vote on? Because I don't think we're meeting. My recollection was you're gone the 28th and you're gone,
No, the other way around. No,
The other way around?
Anyway,
I've gone the 28th.
I'm gone previously.
So
okay.
what would our goal be for next time? That we make these few edits and we,
Let's try to get it as close to the final form for the summaries as possible.
without worrying,
Depending on what the workload is after we get to tonight, and, there's gonna be a Board of Selectmen meeting, I believe, on the 17th, which I think this will be, the GRC will be on the agenda for reappointment, / extension of our term, and, I hope to get more direction there. If we don't get an extension for some reason, then we'll have to talk about what we want, whether we wanna turn in, whatever we can at that point, or if we're not comfortable with that, then I'm assuming we're gonna get an extension. I find it very hard to believe that we wouldn't get an extension. So.
well, I think we'll be once we get through all of the stuff we've just worked on, I think we'll be pretty close to having something that, with some formatting or editing.
I
The
agree.
only thing we'd have to do is put some sort of a summary in the
Highest
beginning,
level summary.
the highest level summary,
Right.
and then make sure all the attachments, and make some decisions about, do these tables stay within the text, or do they get put into an appendix? Those kinds of things, but that's more formatting than
Right.
anything else.
Right.
I think we'll have all
The pieces.
the nitty gritty, all the knowledge.
Based on this, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you wanna take a crack at it, or your questions? or something?
Sure, I'll go quick. I
You know,
get points for brevity.
okay, well, yes, you did, and you were very helpful to me. I found a sheet, just let me say one thing. I found a sheet that you had, that was in the beginning of your file. What you sent to me. You sent me the
I sent you the
spreadsheet,
spreadsheet.
and then there was one page in front of it.
Yeah.
And I sort of
that was
cross-checked.
that was-
I know it was probably some preliminary thing
It
that
was
you
a
did.
working document.
And the one thing, number 8, where I ended up with the number 8, that was administrative task, like I said, 17 out of 20 said they had enough administrative tasks, and you said 13 said yes to A. Only 3 said yes to B, which is what I agreed, only 3 said they need, but I got that all 13 of,
All 17 and 13.
yeah, and I just wondered,
I don't have the raw data.
Do you wanna- We can look at it if you want. Do you wanna go back?
well,
over
no,
the-
I'm just, yeah, I didn't know whether this was preliminary or I just wanted to make sure that, where you said something completely different than I said, I just didn't,
Well, obviously I missed 4. or you interpreted 4 then differently than I did, or something like that, right? If
Yeah.
I came up with 13, you came up with 13.
Because you came up with yes and no's, maybe I took some of the ones that were not a definitive YES and said, that's a yes.
Could be. That could be.
And I'm not questioning what you did, I'm just making sure that I,
No, I mean, I said,
What number did you say you had for the A, for 8A? What was the number?
A was, she had
17 out of 20.
17 yeses.
Yeah, there's literally 17 yeses there.
yeah, and I counted the okay as a yes. I don't know whether you
Well,
did.
That
Sounds
might-
reasonable.
Yeah, that might mean 18? I don't know, I'd have to, 1, 2, 3, yeah, sure. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
You're saying I only said,
You said 13. Maybe it was a
that was for
typo.
question 8?
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Can't tell you.
No.
But now I feel worrying about how my math is gonna be on these other things.
Oh, don't,
Don't worry about that. So here's my summary versions. I have one extra copy for the gentleman at the end.
Oh, yours is much shorter than
So
mine.
oh,
let's,
good Lord.
can we skip the possible high-level headlines? Let's skip those for
Sure.
now. And let's go right to question 11.
Oh, you did high level
Yeah.
headlines, I like
So
that.
does your board have sufficient administrative assistance? I said every board has sufficient administrative assistance. However, some boards want more. Mention the planning board, the elementary school, and the board of health. And that board of health, of course, is
The same as what I did.
similar to what you said.
Yeah.
Pretty clear, question 11?
That's my-
Can we, this is nitpicky, can we change some boards to 3 boards?
Of course. 3.
So that just highlights that it's only 3 to 20.
So.
Okay, I guess from a format point of view, are we going 3 out of 20, or are we just saying 3?
I like 3 to 20, because, or out of 20, because I think it gives good perspective.
Because that gets us to our percentage without,
So if you want to do however some boards and then 3 to 20 in parentheses afterwards, if that's what you're saying, I don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So, question 12, does the board interact or give direction or decision from the selectmen or the town administrator? So, to be clear, question 12 is about interacting with selectmen and town administrator, as opposed to the next one, which is about
Other boards.
other boards,
Yeah.
right? So for question 12, the overwhelming majority of boards and committees do not interact with or receive direct suggestions from the selectmen or the town administrator.
So this is not a great question, because part A is 2 questions in one,
Mhm.
really, to interact with the board.
Under the interact with the town administrator.
Right, so I guess where we're saying no for overwhelming majority, because it probably doesn't matter, whatever that number is, but it was not a great question. Do you remember the number of the boards when you wrote that, the overwhelming majority, like if we were to put in parentheses the number?
Well, it says only 4 committees
No, I don't have.
mention occasional or infrequent. So then you subtract 4 from 20, wouldn't it be
So
16?
it'd either be 16 or some may have just not answered the question. There's a few people who just didn't answer certain questions, so I just don't remember if
Okay.
that was the case in
Yeah.
this one.
Okay.
You might have to.
So,
Questions
of
12.
favor.
Where's my summary? Right here someplace. Nobody would ever want to steal my summary. It's like this.
Did anybody leave it blank for question 12?
I would guess just the housing authority.
Which doesn't
Well, I
count because
don't,
we've
I don't, I
already
don't
had.
count that.
No. No one, even the housing authority's had a response to that one.
But I ignored the housing.
So, I think overwhelming majority is sufficient, you don't need to go back and put the number in there.
I'm happy if we use 16, if that's right, and I'll just double check. And by the way, even though Ford may have mentioned it, I need to make sure there's no overlap. It's possible that 18 said no, but nevertheless said something. I can double check. And you see the second bullet, only 4 committees all appointed. Mentioned occasional or infrequent election. Somebody mentioned, and I think it was the health, but I'd have to double check. Somebody mentioned that they used to have check-ins with the town administrator, but no longer, something like that. I didn't bother calling that one out.
For number 12?
Number
I
12.
saw something like that in one of my questions.
Was it health who said that they used to do that, and now they don't, or assessors?
Yes, the board generally, excuse me. The board generally does not interact with the selectmen or town administrator directly, except in the past, we had a regular liaison from the
Oh,
selectmen
yeah.
who attended our monthly meetings. This practice stopped when the town administrator was hired.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I mean,
I wasn't sure how to shoehorn that into this answer, into this summary here, so I didn't.
I'm actually surprised by that practice. I don't know of any other municipalities that have a liaison like that, whether it's a town administrator, town manager, or a selectman.
Well-
I mean, it's, Board of Health is such a specific
Such
function.
regulated.
Yeah, very regulated, specific.
Well, there was a time, I think, when every board had a selectman sort of assigned to them, and maybe that, someone that would sit in on their meetings and, but I don't,
Is that what it was? Did the selectmen all have, were the selectmen all sort of liaisons to particular boards back in the day?
Not now. That had been the case
yeah,
4
about,
or 5 years ago.
I
4 or
was
5
gonna
years
say
ago.
8 or 9 years ago it was too, I think.
True,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
But
also.
before town
But
administrator?
until like 4 years ago.
Maybe when Jenna was here, they were still doing it. I think,
When Janet was here, we were still doing it.
yeah.
Yes.
Because that's when I was still on.
When the town
board or
administrator came on, the new town administrator
Yeah,
came on,
Kelly.
it was, I think it was just about at that time that it was dissolved.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was the Board of Selectmen that,
That
Dissolved.
chose to dissolve it.
yeah.
I think the assumption was at some point, specifically coming out of the Collins Center, I think, to some of the selectmen, not to the board, but to some of the selectmen, suggested that the town administrator would take care of all the committees, so the selectmen shouldn't be doing it, or something to that effect. That's anecdotal, I don't know that's fact, but the time frame was when
Yeah.
Kelly arrived.
Okay. Well, I agree with your approach, I wouldn't shoehorn that one in there.
Bert, you're still taking it, I see.
No, that's okay.
So 13 is infinitely or never coordinate your board activities with other town departments. Given the overwhelming majority, coordinate their activities with other departments. About half said they do this frequently. And these were mostly but not exclusively elected boards. But frequently was not defined, it's subject to interpretation, right? We talked about this last week, how somebody might say monthly is infrequently, or might call it frequently,
Frequently,
somebody else
yeah,
might not,
yeah.
right? So that doesn't matter, keep it what it's all. And then I called out the second bullet, Board of Parks and Cemetery was the only elected board who says they never coordinate their activities with other town departments. I don't know if that matters, but I just thought it was interesting, a little interesting factoid.
If we can add context to frequently, I mean, my recollection was people really took frequently to mean sufficiently. Is that your recollection? Can we decide as a committee whether or not contextually what frequently meant?
And for this
For
particular
this particular
question,
question?